Yo, what's going on, everybody? We got the most expensive albums ever made by Mike the Snare. Now, I know this is an older video by Mike the Snare, but hey, we're going back because I know I really enjoyed the last video about the Musi app. Thought that was pretty good. So, I'm like, hey, this video looks interesting. So, let's check it out, man. Let's go. Oh, we got the meal. Pizza rolls.
All of the best media costs a lot of money to create. John Carter, Concord, Joker 2, Immortals of Avium.
Well, all those failed.
Ready? Let's go. Cash rolls everything around me.
The first album on this list is one that you can't listen to. Once Upon a Time in Shaolin is the Wu-Tang Clan's 7th studio album released in 2015. And I say released because it's never been made publicly available and only one copy exists in the entire world. It was sold off in a 2015 auction. The winning bidder was Pharmaceutical Bro and
stupid, evil, dumbass guy
Martin Shkreli for $2 million. Coincidentally, this makes Shaolin the most expensive album ever sold. Shkreli spent the next 2 years threatening to leak it and even destroy it because he's a
stupid, evil, dumbass guy.
But he went to jail in 2017, and the U.S. government seized his assets, including Shaolin. It was then sold to the NFT company Pleaser DAO, with whom it resides to this day. So why did it cost $3 million to make? According to reports, it's a double album, 31 songs long in total. It was recorded in Staten Island and Morocco. Cher is on it. The Barcelona FC football team is on it. What also might be contributing to that amount is the packaging. Like, are you seeing that? Come on now. Like, look at that. Ooh, that had to have been at least $7 of the total cost. People who have heard this album at listening parties, like one held this past year in Tasmania, have said it's pretty good. Maybe not on the level of 36 Chambers, but certainly a highlight in the group's discography.
Sure, if your album is costing $4 million, $5 million to make, that should be perfect, bro.
Don't worry though, if you want to hear it, Wu-Tang Clan will release this album on October 8th. 2103. I personally can't wait to listen to it when I'm 108 years old. Now, if you like your music to be audible, then this one will be right up your alley. After the 2009 MTV VMAs, Kanye West was pop culture's #1 jackass. His next album would be, in his own words, a backhanded apology. He went off to Honolulu in late 2009 and rented the entirety of Avex Studios 24 hours a day. Not only were Kanye and his engineers and his producers working around the clock, but so were the myriad of collaborators who also flew out to Hawaii.
Right,
stayed there.
I forgot. There's like a bunch of fucking collaborators on. How many collaborators are on this album?
Opulence was the name of the game here, and the game was for the N64. Their time in Hawaii lasted about 6 months, with some extra sessions happening afterwards in Burbank and NYC. All in total, this beautiful, dark, twisted fantasy cost about $3 million to make. Also, brief housekeeping bit, I'm ranking these albums by how much they cost to make at the time of their release, but in the event of a tie, the tiebreaker will be how much they cost adjusted for inflation in 2024. My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy released in November 2010 to reviews such as... People loved it, absolutely loved it. And specifically for this discussion, it sounds expensive. Lots of different instruments, lots of people. There's a grandiose and lavish feel to this album. Along with the rave reviews, the album sold incredibly well and has gone triple platinum in the US. I could keep going on, but in all honesty, talking about this album...
I'm not gonna lie, I haven't listened to this whole album, bro.
And knowing...
I mean, obviously I've heard like the really big songs, but like I haven't like sat down and actually listened to it.
Where Kanye would end up today makes...
I'm not really a Kanye guy, so...
So I'm gonna
obviously Kanye has bangers, but like I just never was really like crazy for Kanye.
Move on before I start crying nonstop by Julio Iglesias. You know Julio Iglesias? Huge Latin American singer, by some metrics the most successful ever.
Really?
Nonstop was his second English language
I've never heard of this guy.
A clear attempt to break into the American market. And for the rest of this segment, here's a funny cat. There is really not much more info available about this one, except that it cost $3 million. No special reason is given, so I imagine it's due to the personnel, which included Stevie Wonder, and the studios it was made in, like Sunset Sound and Compass Point. The album itself is a good listen too. It sounds lush and ornate, and Julio's voice is pristine throughout. But does Nonstop sound like $3 million? I don't know. And that opens up an interesting
I have
question
never
that
heard of
relates
this
to all
ever.
of these albums. How can we tell if music sounds expensive? With film or video games, it's easier. You see all the fancy CGI and special effects, you know the studio overworked a VFX team without paying them enough. You see all the ray tracing and blast processing in a game, you know they were forced to crunch
Geometry
to appease
Dash?
out-of-touch shareholders forcing a live service model. Music, though? Much harder to tell. Maybe there are certain signs that some music costs a lot to make. Like, for me personally, when I hear strings, that communicates to me regality, wealth, big dollar bills. Or going back to MBTDF, having lots of varied instruments, or even just lots of instruments, or lots of singers, can reflect lots of money spent. But even then, most people can't tell how expensive a string quartet was to hire just by hearing them. Ooh, that's a good YouTube title in the making. $1 violin versus $1 million violin.
I couldn't tell, probably.
You know what's really untouchable? This album's budget. But for real, where was the $4 million spent on this album? Korn's fifth album was produced by Michael Beinhorn, most known for 2 of the early Red Hot Chili Peppers albums and Soundgarden Super Unknown. He probably cost a chunk of change to
I mean, I know
the Korn guys
who
were
Korn
also
is,
very
but like
focused
I've
on
never
nailing
really,
sounds on this album.
you know.
According to Jonathan Davis,
Personally,
drums
not my
took
cup
a
of tea.
month to record.
Actually, I
and
don't know. I
vocals
don't
took
think I've
almost
actually-
6.
I don't think
Plus,
I've
the
actually
album
listened
took
to
2
an
years to record
entire
as a
Korn
whole,
song.
which was longer than their past albums. But none of that was the main reason for the $4 million price tag. Turns out that the actual album itself only cost about $700,000.
So
the
what's
biggest
the
contributor to the
3
total
million
cost
more?
was housing. One of the bandmates told Kerrang, "We moved to Phoenix and rented 5 houses for $10,000 apiece for 4 months. We came to LA,
Why?
rented 5 more houses for $10,000
Why?
apiece for 4 more months. We went to Canada and rented
Why?
$8,000. That's a week, not a month. Does that help explain it?"
No, why? What
Untouchables
is?
sold pretty well though. Less than the 4 albums before
Oh,
it.
can
but
you
it's still
explain
much-
why we needed to spend thousands and millions of dollars on housing? What? Who the fuck is Chris
Well,
Gaines?
here's an odd one. The only album by Chris Gaines. Who's that? Sounds like a cool guy.
No.
You probably already know this, but in case you don't, Chris Gaines is actually the alter ego of 90s country megastar Garth Brooks.
What's a Garth Brooks? Well, he's a guy.
In the late 1990s, Garth and Paramount
I
was
still don't
working
know who
on a
that
feature
is.
film called The Lamb about the fictional Chris. And as a teaser to it, a pre-soundtrack as they called it, Garth made this album. He promoted it a ton. too,
pre-soundtrack?
with an SNL
What does that even
appearance
mean?
Where Garth hosted, but Chris performed, and a VH1 Behind the Music episode.
All that was on top
This is
of the
before my
album's
time.
$5 million cost. What can I say? Garth raked in big bucks in the 90s, so he also got to spend big bucks.
Now, if you've never heard of The Lamb, that's because it never existed. The film never got made. But the album sure did. Instead of Garth's usual country, Chris Gaines was more pop and even R&B. Lead single Lost in You is a great example.
I played every field, I suppose. But there's something
You ever hear
Doesn't
Childish
sound bad.
Gambino's cover of it?
you're around, baby. I have found I
This is lucky better.
in you.
Oh my god! The rest of the album is pretty good as well. Like, I was actually kind of surprised. I thought this was considered the black sheep of Garth's catalog.
So he
but
was like,
showed
"Fuck it,
me
I'ma spend
aspects
$5
of
mil on
Garth
this
as a
shit."
musician that I never knew about. Learning is fun. The Life of Chris Gaines went double platinum in the US, but did not sell as well
Hey
as the
kids,
albums by
spelling
Garth
is
himself.
fun.
Though in an interesting twist, Lost in You remains Garth's only top 5 Billboard hit. I've seen this echoed before, but if Garth had just put this out under his own name, it probably would have done better. Why he felt the need to separate it with a whole new persona,
Well, maybe because he was country before, right? Maybe he like didn't want people to think he like sold out and like just changed to a new genre. I don't know. Maybe
is
he was
unknown,
afraid of that.
and it certainly confused the public. Still, this is the most interesting
Maybe.
musical thing Garth Brooks has ever done, just barely edging out his most recent album only being sold in Bass Pro Shops. You'll love to see it. But you know what I don't see much these days? Musicians talking about their album costs. The only times I hear anyone say, "This album cost so much to make," it's usually followed by, "And it put me in debt for several years," or
Damn.
"And I'm still paying my label back." Even for the biggest, most financially secure artists out there, you usually don't hear that info from them these days. Like, how much does a Taylor Swift album cost to make?
Probably a lot.
I imagine a lot, like at least $1 million, but I have no idea.
I don't know who
Really
this is.
hysterical? This album's English rock group Def Leppard broke through the mainstream in 1983 with Pyromania.
Damn.
And they wanted
Bro,
to
my
continue
music
on.
knowledge, like,
Recording
before
for the follow-up happened over
2000s
3 years, a period
is
that
just
was
cooked.
plagued by delays. The band started out
Crazy
working
cooked.
with Robert Mutt Lang, but he left.
It's probably
for
like
Korn,
some
so they went
30-year-old
to
who's
Jim
watching the video
Steinman,
in the
but they
comments
didn't
like,
working
how do you
with
not
him,
know
so
Def
they went to
Leppard?
Nigel Green, but work went super slow.
I was born in
Then their
2007,
drummer,
bro.
Rick Allen lost his left
It makes
arm
sense
in a
that I don't know
car
who they
accident,
are.
so they had to learn how to adapt to that. Then Mutt Lang came back to help with recording vocals and stayed on for another 18 months, which wasn't going to be that long, but then they had to deal with Mutt's own
Reebok.
car accident. He was fine, no longer.
People actually wear that?
All of that might make you think Hysteria would end up as a monumental failure. Given the $5 million budget, Hysteria had to sell
13
5 million
million
copies to break
Oh my
even.
god.
20 million copies sold.
What?
Big hits like Love Bites and Pour Some Sugar on Me, and rave reviews at the time.
Wait,
and
I've heard
to
this song.
day. Not bad at all for,
Fuck.
as their lead singer envisioned it, the hard rock version of Michael Jackson's Thriller. Speaking of Michael, my friends, we are now entering the Michael Vortex. The king of pop not only sold boatloads of records, but he spent boatloads to make them,
Go.
especially in the later period of his career. One of those later records was History, Past, Present, and Future, Book 1, which cost $10 million. Why did this one
Why?
cost so much? Because it was Michael Jackson. Turns out, once you birth the bass line from Get on the Floor unto the world, you can do whatever you want. This album costing $10 million is especially weird though. Yes, it's a double album, but the first half is a greatest hits album. I've never seen that before. The second half has all the new songs, songs that were largely influenced by things that, if I bring them up in passing, will turn this video's comment section into a goddamn war zone. As such, this is, relatively speaking, an abrasive, confrontational album by Michael. Still has great songs though. I personally would go to bat for both Scream and They Don't Really Care About Us as some of Michael's best songs ever. And MJ went all out to realize his vision. Dozens of collaborators, 11 studios, and his well-known perfectionist tendencies layered on top. It all just makes you want to yell. Yeah, like that. History Book 1 didn't sell as well as the other MJ records before it, but it was still an MJ record, so it sold 20 million units and is one of the best-selling albums of all time. For all the Fleetwood Mac fans watching, I think you'll be very excited to see Michael Jackson take the third slot. His album before History was 1991's Dangerous, which also cost about $10 million to make, and it was expensive for the same reasons as History. Lots of collaborators, lots of studios, Michael, Get on the Floor bassline, etc. When it comes to collaborators though, this is the first MJ album in a while that didn't have Quincy Jones on it.
Oh.
In his place, we got the 3 Bs, Bruce Swedien, Bill Bottrell, and Betty Riley. Betty is the most crucial to Dangerous's sonic identity, as the album pulls heavy influence from New Jack Swing. The overall sound is a little less clean, a little more unhinged.
So
than Bad
wait.
and Thriller.
Do like the do the videos of the album also like come into account for the price? Because I like these videos look like
Definitely
expensive.
didn't cost less though. But Michael
Kind
was
of.
still in his
I guess for that
imperial
time,
era,
right?
So it was money
I mean,
well
it doesn't
spent.
look that good now, but I
Dangerous
guess
went
back
on to
then it
sell
looked good.
32 million copies worldwide, and score 9 hit singles like Remember the Time and Black and White.
It don't matter if you're black or white.
Sometimes budgets grow because projects get caught in development hell. Guns N' Roses' Chinese Democracy invented development hell and then got stuck in development hell.
Direct
Check this out.
TV.
This is the album that was famous for not existing. It's the Duke Nukem Forever of music. I don't have the space here to recount the entire story of Chinese Democracy. It spans 14 years, about 10 of them spent actually recording the album.
God damn.
Tons of personnel changes, tons of delays, a tour for the album 7 years before it came out, the death of someone known as Yoda, and a guy named Buckethead. I won't sugarcoat this. Making this album consumed Axl Rose and his wallet. Geffen cut funding for it in 2005, and Axl had to pony up the money for 3 years to get it over the finish line. That same year, the New York Times put the budget at $13 million. You know what's wild too? We don't know how much Axl ponied up between Geffen cutting the funding and the album coming out in 2008. I'm working off a potentially incomplete number, and it's still the second most expensive album ever
God
made.
damn.
The saddest thing about albums like this, any media like this, is that the lead up is always more interesting than the finished product. I mean,
True.
no shade to Chinese Democracy. I didn't hate it. It is basically an Axl Rose solo album, though. Oh man, I didn't even mention that. All of the other founding members of Guns N' Roses aren't on this album. They left long before it came out. But
Really?
I still enjoyed it for what it is. Then again, I'll say that I'm not super caught up on Guns N' Roses. I know the hits, but not the deeper catalog. My perspective is definitely influenced by my lack of context going in. Chinese Democracy went on to sell 2.6 million
That
copies by February.
is not even that
2008.
good.
Certainly a respectable number
For the
but
budget?
Considering the money
Yeah.
invested and the time spent, it was still a bit of a bomb. Number 2 was a nice break from Michael Jackson albums. Let's keep this going with the Michael Jackson album. The King of Pop's final album, 2001's Invincible, is the most expensive album
Invincible.
ever made.
Scott thought it was
Costing
Mark
$30
Grayson.
million? And in 2024, that would be $53 million? What the fuck? That's a huge jump up
Hey,
from
it's Michael
all of these
Jackson,
other
bro.
albums. Why did this one cost so much to make?
Michael Jackson.
Strap in, folks. Invincible took roughly 4 years to make, from 1997 to 2001. That time frame is important because that's when digital recording really took off, and MJ, the avid perfectionist, basically fell down the Pro Tools rabbit hole. For past albums, he was already doing take after take to get the perfect sound, but now he had no limits to what he could create, and I don't mean that in a good way. In tandem, he was looking to get out of his contract with Sony. At the time, he and Sony Music's CEO, Tommy Mottola, were clashing hard, specifically on budget. Tommy thought $1 million was enough for an album. Excessive, even.
What?
In total, Invincible had about 100 different musicians on it. Don't forget tons of producers and writers too, with Michael having a hand in nearly every single song. And also don't forget the 10 different studios it was recorded
10?
in across the US. This one
Why?
thing blew my mind. At one point, Michael was renting 6 of those studios at once, even if he would only be working in one.
Man,
on a-
they're so rich. They don't even give a fuck, bro. Like, they don't care at this point. Like, just take my money. Like, fuck this shit. I don't give a fuck. I'm not even there, but I'm still gonna fucking pay for it. Like, what? That's crazy.
any given day. So that's just 5 other studios that he was just holding on to, even if he wasn't actually using them in any way.
I mean, you
Oh
can do
my
that.
God.
Fuck it.
And
Fuck
these
it. I'm
were
rich.
not cheap
Fuck it.
studios. Hit Factory, Record Plant, Capitol Records, Marvin's Room. What the hell? Was all of that worth it? Well, with the album itself, I like it. I think it shows Michael willing and able to bring in the sounds of early 2000s R&B. I certainly wouldn't have been able to tell that it cost $30 million, but it is polished and well made. Sales-wise, though, the album went double platinum in the US. Very good for anyone else, but lackluster as hell for MJ and the most
True.
expensive album of all time. Not helping matters was MJ choosing not to tour the album, Sony retaliating by dropping all promotion for it after 2 months, and MJ retaliating to that by calling Tommy Mottola
mean, he's a racist, and he's very, very, very
What?
devilish.
Invincible is certainly a solid album, but not the comeback MJ and Sony were expecting. And it would end
Damn.
up being his final album before his untimely death in 2009. So what do all of these albums have in common?
They're expensive.
Seriously, I'm asking you. This is a motley crew of albums.
I already
if
answered.
I've ever seen one. Well, let's see. Most of them are either pop or rock, except for the 2 rap albums. They were mostly released between the late 80s and early 2000s, again, except the 2 rap albums. They're not any artist's breakout album, which makes sense. Usually to get to a place where you can spend millions, you gotta show you can bring in millions first.
True.
And in terms of reception, some were considered great, some were meh. None of these were catastrophic, at least. They didn't tank anyone's career. The biggest unifier for these records is this. What caused their budgets to balloon? often isn't solely about music. An
Right.
album doesn't cost a lot merely because of its production, or rather because
Fucking
of
spending
unneeded
thousands of
excess
dollars
or
on
delays or houses
places
or
that
other
we're not
issues
even
that
at.
allow costs to skyrocket. Let me know what you think of these albums, and let me know if you want me to talk about more of them. Like, there are plenty more albums.
What are the
that
cheapest
famous
albums?
for costing an insane amount of money, but I didn't cover them this time because they didn't make the top 10. Let me know if you want me to cover those records at some point. I
Hey,
hope you also take
I'd
away
watch
from
that.
this rundown that spending a lot of money doesn't guarantee good music. There are
True.
plenty of ways to make or enjoy music
Right, bro.
without breaking the bank.
Now we got
Which brings
fucking
me to this
oh shit.
video sponsor, Mackie.
Now we got kids on fucking BandLab and FL Studio creating music, and they could just get the biggest song in the fucking country, bro. Like look at David. You know David, Romantic Homicide. That song has like 1 billion, maybe like 1.5 billion streams on Spotify, and it literally lurks around like the top 100 on Spotify all the time. And it was released like 3 or 2 years ago, and that song was literally created on BandLab. And David literally made it in his closet. I mean, you can low-key tell because, like, the quality of the song is pretty bad. But the fact that people are willing to listen to it, billions and billions of people are willing to listen to it, kind of says a lot, you know? Like, you don't need millions of dollars of studio equipment anymore. You don't need to fucking rent out places and shit. Like, you can literally, if you're smart enough, if you're talented enough, if you're creative enough, you can create music with a very, very low budget like David did. And that guy's billions and billions of streams now. Crazy. And he was touring with fucking SZA and shit. And this guy literally making a song in his fucking closet. Man, anything is possible nowadays, especially if you have the technology, dude.
Return of the Mac. Mackie speakers are known for studio quality sound, an affordable price point, and durable build. You won't be needing to spend $30 million to get a value like this. God, that number still blows my mind. Anyway, their new line of CR speakers is their best yet. Bluetooth connectivity, tone knob, location switch. Whether you're making music, listening to music, or eating music, Mackie's CR speakers have you covered. Mackie speakers can survive nuclear blasts. Click the link in the description to learn more about Mackie's CR speakers.
Hey, if you guys want them speakers, go to the original video. Click
Vroom vroom in the tomb. See you later.
in the description. All right. Oh, this is another video by him on my playlist that I want to watch, but not right now because it's 55 minutes. Yeah, guys, what'd you think of the video, man? Thought it was amazing, bro. It was a good video, you know, looking at all the albums. A lot of them I didn't really know. Well, most of the artists I had a familiar thing with, but yeah, it's kind of crazy, man. I mean, at the end of the day, like, it really just shows like the range of like budget you can have for music and how it doesn't really affect it that much at the end of the day. You know what I'm saying? Like, obviously, you know, I'm talking about David and stuff, but like if you only have your closet and fucking BandLab and a goddamn Snowball Blue Yeti, you're not gonna be able to get a Rihanna feature, right? Like, let's be honest, that's not gonna be able to happen. But you can still make something out of it. You know what I'm saying? All right, guys, go subscribe to Mike the Snare. Subscribe to this channel. Go subscribe to my second channel. Go follow my Twitter. And yeah, thanks for watching.